Hello. We are of the facilitators, teachers of the Starsdance Mystery School, and we wanted to have a conversation tonight about 2022. And so we're going to do that. So Starsdance Mystery School is an online mystery school where we explore magic and approach astrology in a sacred way. And then also, it's a community on Discord and where we are really eclectic. We don't all practice the same kinds of astrology or have the same lineages of astrology. But we all, I believe, want to use astrology for our personal understanding, but also responsibility to the earth and to, making the world a better place. And so I'm going to ask my colleagues here to introduce themselves. But my name is Tere. I use they, them pronouns. I'm here in Minneapolis, land that is sacred to the Dakota and the Anishinaabe people who still live here and still tend this land. And so I honor that relationship. And also, I have been an astrologer since the early mid 90s, started studying astrology in the 80s when my teachers, and the predominant style of astrology at the time was very psychological. So I learned a psychological approach to astrology and then a mythic approach to astrology. I'm also a witch, and part of my heritage of my spiritual path is the reclaiming tradition, which was and is a tradition that had a strong focus on political activism as well as reclaiming the goddess was the first iteration of that tradition, and it has also become very expansive as far as our approach to deity, and it's a very eclectic tradition as well. But I center my astrology in my witchcraft and in the modern focus of astrology, which has its own sort of lineages and uses. But I'm also becoming more informed by traditional astrology, which got reintroduced into the field after I became an astrologer. So for Stars Dance, I do a lot of writing and teaching, and I love this astrological community that we have created together. And it's just so much fun to share astrology with the students and with the people here in this conversation. So I would like to pass this along to Aurora, who was the person that we dreamed together Starsdance Mystery School into being. We were co-creators of this. And so welcome, Aurora. How are you? And what would you like to tell us?
Hello, my name is Aurora Dawning. I use she, her pronouns. I'm trying to think of the order in which you revealed yours. Oh, Tare. Located in Pittsburgh, PA, USA. I consider myself an evolutionary and even I'm thinking trying on, a mythic astrologer. So really embracing the power of the nodes of the moon and how those factors within a chart, when paired with modern psychology, being able to allow ourselves to heal karmically and to embrace who we are as a vessel traveling towards balancing out our energy and becoming the best versions of ourselves. As of now, yeah, I definitely have been inspired by Jessica Lanyadoo, as well as Austin Coppock, Stephen Forrest, who has been foundational to my understanding of evolutionary astrology, and Tere, who has definitely been a mentor, teacher, and friend for quite a few years. And yes, we birthed Starsdance Astrology Mystery School into being. Oh, and I've, of course, like a white person, forgot to refer to the lineage of the land in which I currently reside, which belongs to the Haudenosaunee as well as the Osage tribes. And in gratitude for them for cultivating this land, for it to be as beautiful as it is for us to enjoy now, while also recognizing the damage that we're doing to this planet. Yeah, looking forward very much to discussing the transits coming up, especially with regard to the topic that everybody is talking about, the Pluto return of 2022 in the United States. So I think we have a lot of fun things in store, and I'm going to pass it off to Bonnie.
Hello, my name is Bonnie May. My pronouns are she, her. I'm currently residing in Washington, D.C., the belly of the beast in the United States, which is land sacred to the Piscataway, who still live here, still thriving, and are a very active community and very active politically and doing a lot of really cool things. So let's see, as far as astrology goes, I'm pretty new to Stardance as a facilitator, so I just started pretty recently. So thank you everyone who has invited me. I'm really excited. I'm the new electional astrologer for Stardance. So what I'll be doing is looking at dates in the future that you can plan rituals or even political actions around. Some of that we'll probably be talking about a little bit with this forecast, which I'm excited about. And I got interested into astrology more seriously beyond just like, oh, I'm a Scorpio, that's my personality. In the very beginning of the pandemic through TikTok, actually, just like seeing people kind of explain astrology more in depth and talking about political events and like the astrology of those events, it got me really excited as someone who considers myself an activist and studied sociology. I like looking at the collective energy of things. So even though I do like looking at personality, I also am really excited about using astrology for those kind of collective energies. And so right now I kind of mix more traditional astrology and modern. I'm studying Hellenistic astrology through Chris Brennan's astrology course. I'm going to be studying electional astrology even more in depth in the coming months too. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about this year ahead. I'm really excited for the new energy of 2022. And I will pass it off to Hemlock.
Hello and thank you. I am Hemlock ShiningCoil. I use she and they pronouns. I live in Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA, which is land sacred to the Haudenosaunee, Osage, and Seneca peoples. I am a reclaiming witch. And came to a Starstance as a my superpower is organization, and so I came to Starstance as registrar and continue in that role even through Patreon, and I also do some facilitation of classes, and I certainly partake in Starstance classes, but I came wholeheartedly to astrology to be a better geomancer. So I am first a geomancer, but sometimes those swap, just enjoying the ride of both. And I'm really interested in this year, the ingresses and conjunctions that are happening, and some retrograde cycles. I'm really interested because we have some big ones coming. We have the usual 3 Mercury retrogrades, of course, but we start the year with this Venus and we end with a Mars. So I'm really excited to talk about those and to frame our year out through those cycles. Did I hit all the points I was supposed to start with? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to tell you all a little bit about Starstance classes that are coming up, because they are super exciting. So in just a few days, on February 18th, we'll be starting our Queering the Planets class, which is really exciting. as well as having a transits track. So transits to the natal planets portion of that class, which I think will be really exciting. The first 5 weeks, so January 18th through February 22nd, will be the Sun through Mars. March 8th through March 29th, we'll be doing Jupiter and Saturn, as well as transits from Jupiter and Saturn. And then Chiron through Pluto will be 4 weeks, April 12th through May 10th. And those will be the gods of change transits. So that takes us through the, Q1 and 2 almost. And then in June, we take a little breather. And then in June, we'll do planets and aspect, which is our big aspects class. We talk about what are all these little angles in the chart, and what do they mean? And then we'll do queer perspectives on the houses August 2nd through 30th. So we are pretty booked out for 2022. I'm sure we will be reassessing another moon magic and conjuring signs, which we just wrapped up with both of those classes in 2021. And doing more offerings. Of course, we'll have some electional rituals coming up, continued meditations, and of course our amazing playlists on 36 Suns for the decans. And I think this goes to Aurora to talk about US Pluto return.
Meeting here. Yeah, so just to give everybody sort of like a warm-up context as sort of the way that we're going to be framing this forecast today, we have chosen, I don't want to use the word Time Lord, but of course that's now the only word that I can think of, but basically a planetary guide through the first portion, and really when Pluto is conjunct the natal Pluto of the United States of America, which just recently, Tere, when did that begin? That was like not too long ago, just a few days?
Well, I'm going to share the chart just so people can understand what we mean. The inside wheel is the US chart, the birth chart for the US. It's called the Sibley chart. And the outside wheel is where the planets will be on the day that Pluto comes back to the same degree, 27 degrees Capricorn, and that is going to happen for the first time on February 20th. So it happens every 248 years or something like that.
And the Sibley chart is, I think there are other charts that people have used as the birth of the US, but this one seems to be the most popular.
Yeah.
And not humans generally do not experience a Pluto return for themselves because it happens so infrequently. But things like books and countries and like the Mona Lisa will have a Pluto return. So works, buildings could have Pluto returns. So this is interesting that we have this and are experiencing this moment. Anyway, yeah, Aurora, tell us more.
I will tell you more. I think that, while there are other countries and other areas of the world and the planet that are going through massive changes, mass death, challenges of corruption and shadow work, this year in particular is very significant to those who inhabit the United States of America. If you're not familiar with Pluto, the themes involved, Pluto loves to really force us, if we don't consciously choose, to venture down into the underworld for the purposes of reclaiming our power and knowing ourselves at our most deep levels that allow us to express our vital energy most fully. However, while that sounds cool, it usually comes with a lot of challenges, a lot of tough physical events, emotional, mental, spiritual events that cause a reckoning of source, where we break down to a point where we fully are able to crack open and to really be scrupulously honest with ourselves. So, and with Pluto being in the sign of Capricorn, we're basically being forced at the beginning of this year, and as it's been mentioned, since Pluto moves so slowly, we've been feeling the impacts of this probably within the past couple years. However, with it being exact, as with the moon that waxes and wanes, there is a point between a full moon and a new moon. There is this fluctuation of like the energy rising and the energy falling, and with us being at the exact point at this part of the transit, it's basically going to allow us to feel the energy at its most potent point. And with the Pluto being in Capricorn, the shadow sides of Capricorn, we are being forced, and I'm going to keep using that word because it feels like a good one when it comes to Pluto, to do our work. And if you're having any sort of feelings or things come up for you when I make this statement of it's time for us to do our work, it could be because of capitalism or workaholism without any joy or gratitude. But this aspect and this heaviness and seeing all the ways in which work and jobs and careers and these things have been weaponized over time, where we're seeing the underbelly of Capricorn. So work has a lot of really challenging connotations at this point in the middle of a pandemic, where people are being forced to go to work, to tend to other sick people, or to do jobs where they are being, in order to make a living wage, to be forced into these positions where they have to work in order to live, doing jobs that are actually quite dangerous. So if you're having a reaction to the word work, it might be worth considering and reframing and thinking about this as a prioritization of duties with regard to your values. And this is where, duty is, it has to do with our natural skills, the things that we are good at, maybe the skills that we have cultivated, and the authentic gifts that are meaningful to us as we do them, even if they are fun. These are the things that we do that we don't always want to, but we do them because they need to be done, not solely for gain, but also doing them with regards to the collective, as a society. We come to this reckoning point of 283 years where we have to come to terms with the ways in which we have chosen to fulfill our duties, what duty means to us. Do the things that we do with our time and the work that we do in this life, does it coincide with our values, and really being forced to re-inspect those things. So the year, it's going to be a challenging one. It's going to be the necessary prep work as Pluto prepares to enter in, with Pluto returning to its natal sign in Capricorn. It's towards the ends of Capricorn, so we've got a couple more years, but Pluto will be moving into Aquarius, which the shadows of that could be the shadows of human evolution and dark visions. I think it's within 2023 or 2024. But a few questions to maybe consider as we begin to go through some of, what's coming is, what are the things that you are able to do here that no one else can do quite like you can? And what needs to be followed up with regards to working with others? Because as a collective, this is very much going to be, in astrology, we think of things, personally, collectively, and transpersonally. These are the three phases of experience that we can have. And a lot of this is going to have to do with working together and doing our work collectively and following up with people when people burn out, or tagging out and sharing that labor. So trying to approach, the darkness of Pluto with an attitude of duty and doing the right thing because it needs to be done. And we know that things are not great right now. So we have decided to follow Mars through the year. Mars is going to be going through Capricorn all the way through Gemini. So this breaks the year up into very seasonable and scrumptious 2-month sections of the year. So we're going to be going through and following Mars and using Mars's transition through the signs, starting in the sign of Capricorn, which is where Pluto is now, and giving us insight into how we can best use our agency and being able to own the power that we have in doing the work that we're good at, to make changes, and to cultivate transformation in a nation that so deeply needs it. So yeah, that's the way that we have this planned. I hope that that was enough context. So yeah, and it's worth saying too, I'll just say one more thing before we begin, that because of the nature of these transits and the fact that things are really dire right now, I want to refer to what Jessica Lignado said in her recent, forecast for 2022 is, if you need to, take a breath, get up, move around, take a break, pause this, do what you need to do in order to take care of yourself, but also acknowledge that this is really tough stuff. We don't want to scoot over how dire and challenging things are for us, as well as those who are in poverty, socioeconomic status, the earth, there's a lot of suffering that's perhaps going on at various levels of experience, but just take care of yourself and do what you can as we go through the challenges of this year, with the intention and the forefront of our awareness of, like, we do have agency, we have the right to choose our fate using our will, and faith in the universe. So I think that I'll hand it over to Tere at this point as we take a look at January.
Thank you. Yes, so right now we're talking, we're having this conversation on January 4th. And right now Mars is in Sagittarius. It hasn't quite moved over into Capricorn yet. We've got a list of transits here, and I have them broken down into sections. The big black lines are the dates that Mars ingresses into a new sign. And so using that Mars as a guide through the year, right now we're in Mars and Sagittarius. We just recently had a new moon. We just recently had a new moon in Capricorn, and it fell just, the day after the New Year's. So that added to that, energy of let's lay down some foundations. Let's do some things that will make a difference in this world. I think the way you talked about Capricorn, Aurora, as a worker, as about being about work, it's also about our structure, infrastructure, and like what is holding us up and what can we count upon. And so that's been sort of in tone, I think, with this Capricorn new moon. And, I think, Hemlock, you mentioned that we're starting the year with a really important retrograde. I don't know if you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, so right now we're having Venus moving very slowly backward through the sign of Capricorn, and having already made one or two conjunctions with Pluto. Where are we at with that?
Two.
We've made two. So we have one more conjunction with, so it's sitting in the same chair, as I like to say, with Pluto. And that Pluto being, again, so close to the US return spot for Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Venus, this planet of values, is walking backwards through Capricorn, going, do these structures serve my values? And I think that it's, framing our year with, a new moon at the start of it, and then this Venus looking at structure and looking at, does it serve my values, and do my values align? Is such a January vibe in so many ways, but like almost amplified. Like we always, like, many people have New Year's intentions or resolutions or whatever you want to say. I'm gonna get a new plant. I love that new planner smell. I think Venus is amplifying that around, like, how am I actually gonna serve? Are the structures that I have in place actually serving me? Like, do I really need this piece of exercise equipment or this gym membership? Is that actually going to serve me? Hopefully that the Venus helps you with that, make those decisions. And I hope that, if you are doing an exercise equipment, that's great. I didn't talk about this, but I came to astrology through the the body astrologer Claire Gallagher, who did fitness instruction based on planetary positions, which was amazing. So you can nerd out about astrology with lots of mundane things. So yeah, Venus is walking backwards, and then we'll meet up with Mars, or Mars will meet up with Venus in a little bit.
We have another retrograde coming before Mars leaves
Yeah,
Sagittarius. We've got Mercury.
yeah,
Also, gonna be in Aquarius, but then it's gonna go back into
and
Capricorn
Capricorn.
and conjoin. It already has conjoined Pluto one time, so it's doing the same thing that Venus is doing. It's coming and meeting Pluto, this energy of transformation and death and rebirth. I'm wondering if you have anything to say about all of this pileup of energy, Bonnie, this kind of Pluto and Capricorn focus.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was born during a very similar energy with Venus and Mercury in retrograde in Scorpio, with Venus conjunct Pluto. So I've been rethinking what that means for me, and I feel like Mercury is like an ally to Venus, which I think we'll see again with Mars being an ally to Venus. But I think of Mercury as being like someone who's like, okay, wait, let me help you write this down. Let me help you record this. Like, what is going on with your values? Like, let me be a guide and like help you go through this journey. And I think of Mercury just like kind of following Venus and trying to keep up with what they're doing and what they're seeing and recording it all.
Right. So
Yeah, and I guess I've noticed here too, I mean, between like the sun, because the sun is in Capricorn now, and the sun is going to be conjunct Pluto, and the moon is going to be conjunct. I'm visualizing, I love that analogy, Hemlock, of the sharing the same chair. And I'm thinking about, with all of these planets, about how they need a bench, and how like in all of the ways, you know, that like we are at a point where we need to collectively work together. It's looking very much like the planets are working together to supercharge the archetype that is Capricorn, for us to really experience it, whether it's in our bodies with Mars, in our emotional body with the moon, or our vitality, our values, and what we perceive as beautiful and meaningful. It just really seems like we, at the very beginning of the year, are getting like the cold, hard eye, you know, which is also very Capricorn-esque, of what this energy is right now at its most potent form, with all of these planets in this sign.
right.
And we had a Capricorn pileup a few years ago, just to kind of think back about the Capricorn pileup that happened in late 2020.
Lead up to the pandemic.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
early.
it was in 2019.
It was 2018.
Just like a big theme with COVID and everything.
Yeah, so just kind of revisiting those, like if you think back to December of 2019, January of 2020, what was going on for you? Are any of those things coming up again? Because it's while it's not all the same planets, it's certainly a lot of them. And it's worth thinking back to that time and like what were the themes then and what are the themes now? How do they Venn diagram?
Right. So another influence that I wanted to share the chart again of the U.S. Pluto return, because another thing that's going on, not only is Pluto returning, but Neptune has been opposing its own position. So the natal Neptune of the country, and in the Sibley chart, Mars and Neptune are square. And so Neptune has also been squaring Mars. So there is, if Capricorn is about our work, then Neptune is about our fantasies and our dreams and our illusions. And, so we've got this really complex stew here of both things, and it's actually not super easy to like to be just in one basket or the other. We have to be sort of like in this world of what's the fantasy, what's the illusion that we're going through, as well as how do we need to work and build structure and create lasting things. So I just wanted to say that this Neptune influence comes through the year through various influences that we'll talk about. But during this first period of where Mars is still in Sagittarius, Mars will square Neptune at 20 degrees, so really close to those US positions of both of those planets. So we're sort of getting some clues about how, as a nation, we hold illusion and move through our fantasies. And this theme, I think, will be coming up throughout the year. For one reason, because Jupiter just recently entered Pisces. And Pisces and Neptune have an affinity for each other. Some people say Neptune is the co-ruler of Pisces, and Jupiter definitely is the ruler of Pisces. So we've got these themes right at the beginning of the year. One is sort of the somber Capricorn energy, and then the other is a more Neptunian fantasy energy. So that's kind of interesting. Would you like to begin talking about, the next period, Aurora, which is Mars going into Capricorn? So that starts January 24th.
Sure. So taking a look here. So as we go through these sections of Mars, one of the things that I thought could be particularly useful is to sort of assign sort of like a keyword or a point of focus for each one of them. And in present tense, as we are living it and invoking it and embracing that energy in the current moment. For Capricorn, I think it was, oh gosh, I can't even remember. Was it working? Does anybody remember?
I have it written down. Give me
Oh,
one.
you're the best. Thank you. I did have this stated. It is just not in front of me.
Hold on. You said so in Capricorn we have responsibility.
Right. So when Mars is transiting through, this 2-month period, really focusing on how can we, maximize and utilize skillfully our responsibilities, while also appreciating them, so we still have, Venus in the sign of Capricorn at this time, and really having an appreciation for our diligence through our ability to just get our responsibilities done. I think that this will be a 2-month period where we're able to, reconnect with our ability to initiate a new, fresh, perhaps connection with the earth in a new way that we haven't experienced before, as well as building something, doing the mundane work that does accumulate over time, but takes time to do. And then, our power through our ability to get things done, to become leaders and to help direct others in getting more work done, so that we can be in right relationship with our resources and with each other, and respect. Respect is also huge for Capricorn. So I think that, as we go through this period of time, I'm looking here for a couple, potent transits that are sort of popping out to me, Mercury going direct, and Tere. Perfect. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is team action. This conjunction of Venus and Mars coming together. So like really, these opposite planets, or these planets that like very traditionally and mythically have a relationship with each other, and they're not always hanging out together. Sometimes they're in different signs and they need to like figure out like, oh, well, if we're squaring each other, how can we get through this argument? Or if we're on opposite pages and opposite sides of, the zodiac, like, how can we come together and relate to each other? But now they're together. So like in the sign of Capricorn, finding bliss and beauty through acts of service and respect, and showing respect and recognizing that respect means different things to different people based upon their cultures and what their beliefs are and what they find to be beautiful, but then still finding ways to meet them. And with your actions, Mars, being able to show that respect in a way that Venus, understands. So you have the support when it comes to responsibility in this, period here of these planets. Venus, is Venus going to be direct yet? Not yet.
Venus turned direct on the 29th.
Oh yes, I do see this here.
And
This
then,
begins their long walk together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and Mars will be together for a while.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Hemlock, I remember you saying something about that. Would you be able to speak to this long walk together that they're going to have throughout?
Yeah. So like the whole like sitting in the same chair for a conjunction, this longer conjunction is almost I almost see as them walking through the signs together. And then, I like to think of as conjunctions as we're on the same page, we're doing the same work, even if those planets do that work differently. And so when I think about, how are these two war planets, traditionally, the us versus them planets, when they're on the same page, like how can we utilize that within ourselves between, like team building and creating community and, creating unity within ourselves. Like what a beautiful time for like Valentine's Day to start thinking about like, am
And
I
something cool that shows that you respect the other person,
Yeah.
consent, but also fun.
Yeah, like I know that
Fun.
it's not exact, but it's pretty dang close. So how can we, how can we utilize those two planetary bodies to help us walk through these next few months as they work together hand in hand, to get through some tough stuff. And I think at this point they're an early Capricorn. They're going to walk past Pluto together.
Down here on March
Yeah.
3rd, they conjoin
Yeah.
Pluto.
Very
And that is-
Rihanna vibes. Like
Yeah.
finally doing it, finally meeting it, the bottom of the bottom, and how beautiful it can be when we are stripped of all of our vices and things, and just the beauty of our core, our core selves, and reclaiming and nurturing the cracks within ourselves that allow the light and the power to shine through, so we can come back up integrated and changed.
Yeah,
It's right after a new moon. Yes, were you going to say something, Bonnie?
oh yeah, it is very romantic, I think. It's because I mean, after Venus has like met with Pluto twice, Mars is like coming around to kind of to be with Venus through this work of going back to Pluto. So yeah, I do think of it as like Venus getting a little extra support, and I'm sure Venus could handle it on their own too, but Mars is there as an ally, and just with how close Mars is leading up to meeting up with Pluto. I think it's a really great time, like just going back to electional astrology and like planning events. I think it's a really good time to like plan some actions, because Mars in traditional astrology, Mars is also exalted in the sign of Capricorn. It's like a very productive Mars. It has like a very productive energy, like Mars wants to get things done, and Capricorn is the sign that is really like likes to plan and get things done. So it's a good time to plan some things and just like create some actions.
Yeah, and the fact that people could definitely be moved by that with the support of Venus, of like, wow, like this is a dark, serious situation, but gosh, everybody is just really doing it, and it is really beautiful when we all work together towards a cause, even when things are really dire. And tying back in, something that Tere mentioned with regard to Jupiter being in Pisces, I think one of the things that we are also going to have to juggle and to look out for this month, but also throughout the duration of 2022, as Jupiter dances through Pisces, goes into Aries for a quick second, and then dips back into Pisces again. With Jupiter making things bigger and making things inspiring and really giving a big oomph to whatever sign that it's in, with it being in Pisces, being expansive, being nebulous, not having any defined boundaries, or like very different from Capricorn's structured approach.
And meeting up with Neptune.
Yes, I think that we're going to have to very much, as we do this collective work, as we organize, as Bonnie said, being aware of how easy it might be for us to sink into illusions of grandeur, going way over the top, or allowing things, like being so impacted by the enormous, throbbing energy of Pisces, and that being enough for us to just let things pass by, just be like, whatever, who cares? A mask, I know it protects my neighbor, but like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There's only so much I can do, but being able to balance those things, to allow ourselves to expand past, the finite, hardcore rigidness and boundaries of Capricorn, and allowing that to inspire a new way of thinking, and perhaps being outside of our homes to an extent, safely, but just being able to tie in, how important it is to look beyond and to remember that we are a beautiful piece of stardust, but also that piece of stardust is on here on Earth at this point in time, and we got some stuff to do. So it's going to be a balance of the waves of these potent dynamic energies.
Right. So at the end of this period of Mars being in Capricorn, we get the Sun conjoined Jupiter, which is an illumination. It is when we really feel that expansiveness. I've been thinking about the idea of economic bubbles, of believing in something that's going to save us and do all the things. I've been thinking about where's cryptocurrency going to go, which I do not understand at all, but I have a feeling it's going to get big because it's kind of money that's a fantasy. I'm not sure, but we're going to see, like we've been through such an austere time that we're going to get real concrete with this Venus, Mars, and Capricorn, but then we're also going to want to get real expansive. And so that'll be interesting as we get later into March. So what is our Mars energy doing in Aquarius? What's the word for that you had?
Yeah,
Visioning,
that word is visioning.
It's visioning. So we take that expansive Jupiter energy and we start to vision through Aquarian lenses. So when Mars goes into Aquarius, it's going to activate two planets that have been very stressful this year, which has been Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. And those two planets made 3 exact conjunctions in 2021. And in 2022, they're going to kind of separate a little bit and then come back into almost a conjunction, but not a square, but not exactly, around October, November timeframe.
Tere, can you speak very quickly to what you recall happening when that square was happening?
There were 3 times where the square happened, and it was, I think, related to phases of bad news around the pandemic, getting sort of like the frustration of how there was opposition with kind of unifying. I think I saw a lot in the pandemic of how we couldn't unify a way of approaching it, that there were divisions. The divisions between Saturn and Uranus approaches is, one is a structured approach and one is a more chaotic, disruptive, even individualistic kind of approach. I think those two energies have really been at odds with each other. And so now that, and Jupiter has been in Aquarius too, sort of like adding to that tension. I think now that Jupiter is out of Aquarius and into Pisces, there is going to be a lot more of this idea of, can't we all just get along in some way? And we're not going to focus on our divisions quite as much. Doesn't mean they're not there. It's just that there's going to be this other way of, what's the way we can all just, feel good again. That's going to be a theme. So, but as this month, or as this period, when Mars is in Aquarius, it's going to activate that square to Uranus, and it's going to conjoin Saturn again during this time period. So there is some, I think some kind of relaxation, but also some activation of tensions. Anyone else got some ideas about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about when Mars goes into Aquarius and meets up with Saturn, that there's this kind of like building this visionary energy to get things done, but Saturn wants to do things at a slower pace, a more sustainable pace. So there might be some tension there. It's a little bit different, I think, from when Mars is in Capricorn of Venus, and there's kind of this passion of like, let's get this done and like work together and like protect our values. And I think when Mars meets up with Saturn, there'll be a little bit more realism to the values of like, okay, this is great, but we need to consider the long-term plan for this. And there might be a bit back and forth between Mars and Saturn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think too, like Mars and Saturn are both happy in Capricorn. I think Mars is kind of meh about Aquarius.
It's like,
Okay. Yeah, it's like, yeah, this is a sign. I have to travel through it. Whereas Saturn is like is also again happy in Aquarius. And I said the other day, Saturn and Aquarius is like, no, the logistics. So like Saturn and Cap is your actual builder. Saturn and Aquarius is like your logistics person. It's either your UPS of the planets. And so I think them meeting up, this will and this drive coming off of being in this place of building and meeting up with, Saturn, who's very happy in Aquarius, just in a different way. And going, okay, I want to do the thing that I'm so excited, be excited about this thing. And Saturn is going, okay, but have you considered the logistics? Like, how are you getting from A to B, buddy?
yeah.
I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that actually supports Mars, and that drive. If you are someone who is willing to say, okay, let me hear the logistics.
Mm-hmm.
If you just want to go, you won't have as fun of a time because you can't get there if you don't put gas in the car.
Totally.
Yeah, it's kind of helpful too, because like Saturn has been in Aquarius for a while, so Saturn's like, okay, buddy, I've been working on this for a while, but Mars is kind of that initiating energy of like, okay, that's cool, but like we can amp this up, like let's amp this up. So
and this is the first time that Mars will be in Aquarius while Saturn's in Aquarius as well. I'm pretty sure.
It was last year too.
Oh, it was. Okay, it was before its retrograde. Okay.
So we did have an opportunity to figure out how we can get some work done with regard to infrastructure and all these things. It feels like, one thing that I've noticed for the past few years, is that it's like, it feels like we've been given a lot of, not to diminish all the lives that have been lost, because there have been a number of people whose lives have been lost and permanently impacted. But it also feels like it could have been way worse, where like we were all like, every single person, met their maker of sorts. But it seems like we've had a lot of opportunities to like fix our bridges, mail people COVID tests. We knew that this was coming, and I feel like during this part of March also coinciding with beginning of spring and like all of this fresh energy that's really trying to come out. You know, we have these 3 transits of like Mars squaring Uranus. So like this friction of like, you know, like getting stuff done and things like suddenly happening. So there could be a big shakeup of things where we need to act. Mars and Saturn supporting each other to actually make quantitative steps towards getting something done in a really potent way, like over the top energy. But then we also have, you know, Jupiter being conjunct, you know, Neptune, where it's like, okay, well, do we give up because all things happen and galaxies explode? Yeah, I think that could be a really good opportunity for us to like have a bit of rest, have a bit of a break, but also, you know, like in the spirit of Capricorn, you know, like follow up, get back to it, you know, give yourself that break, have that stillness. If you meditate, or if you like even just allow yourself 5 minutes of stillness and silence, there could be some really potent, powerful magic coming from the center of the universe that allows us as a species and as a collective that living on this, you know, stolen land, figuring out what it is that we do next. When we've had all these opportunities to do better, to be better, to try harder, to do the things that we haven't followed up on, and being able to do them in a new way that maybe we'd never thought of before, because we had never had the power of Neptune and Jupiter coming together in Pisces to deliver us those like psychic messages from the universe.
So there's frustration earlier, and then we do start to gravitate to this Piscean kind of energy. And Mars is also going to enter Pisces right after, a couple of days after, we have that big Jupiter conjoined Neptune. So what do you call the Mars and Pisces?
Mars in Pisces is allowing.
Allowing. Okay, so
Like
there's
active yet passive, just like Pisces.
What?
It's active yet passive, kind of like Pisces.
Yes.
It's like being active by being like actively being passive.
Yeah, it's a very wet Mars.
It's a wet
Yeah.
Mars. We get a sort of not as big of a transit with Jupiter conjoined Neptune, but we do get Venus conjoined Neptune later, a few days later. And then we have eclipses. So this is the eclipse season while we're sort of allowing, and we are maybe flowing and dissolving and just like trying, you know, it's spring in the northern hemisphere. We might, you know, be weary of the winter. And then we have an eclipse season. The solar eclipse is going to happen in Taurus. That's along the north node. So the nodes also are changing signs in January. So we forgot to mention that because that's a big part of this year. The last 19 months or so, the polarity of the nodes have been north node in Gemini, south node in Sagittarius, and the eclipses have been along those signs. Now they're moving into the polarity of Taurus and Scorpio. And later on, the lunar eclipse will be a south node lunar eclipse at 25 Scorpio. So this is a new focus for us. The nodes are changing our focus, changing our collective evolution. And would people like to discuss just what the nodes are going to be about?
I feel like I've talked a lot, so I want to give somebody else the opportunity. But if nobody has anything to say, I will tell you about the nodes because I've got some thoughts and feels.
So I'll talk a little bit about like Taurus and Scorpio are both fixed. Taurus is fixed earth and Scorpio is fixed water. And you said the south node is in Scorpio. So that kind of place that we know that work well, and we can hopefully grow toward the work of the north node in Taurus for the next 18, 19 months after they move. And you know what one of the things I like to think about with both of these signs is that while they kind of been hand in hand with this Mars and Venus walking together. One of them is Venus's happy place, and one of them is Mars' happy place. And kind of framing that as, what does it mean whenever, we've had Venus and Mars working together. At this point, it looks like they've separated a little bit. And then the nodes move, and we're moving that collective energy into like a Venus Mars not maybe talking on the same page and learning to balance those energies. I think the other piece around the nodes moving is, what if we feel these deep emotions in Scorpio, how can we move into a more earthbound, embodied place with Taurus? Like we can have those deep emotions, but how can we move them into a place of groundedness and embodiment over the next 18, 19 months, as the nodes move through these two signs. And maybe like allowing, I had a check-in with a staff person today, and they were like, I treat myself too much. And I was like, no, treat yourself. There's a global unpleasantness happening. Like, you're allowed to enjoy luxurious things. And I saw, I think Bonnie, you shared like, no, burn the pretty candles, use the bath bomb, drink the nice tea that's been sitting on your shelf. Like, just like do all of those things. If you're feeling the heaviness and the depth and the wetness of Scorpio, do the pleasurable thing. Enjoy it, because we are not promised tomorrow, as we have noticed over the past couple of years. Like do the thing that brings you joy and brings your body into a luxuriousness. I always love the pictures of the little cows with the flower crowns. Like be the cow in the field with the flower crown. Yeah.
Live deliciously.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great way to tie in the energy of this North Node in Taurus, especially because I feel like Uranus has been teaching us some similar lessons in Taurus for a while. So it's Uranus is kind of giving us a preview of what that's going to feel like. And with the South Node being in Scorpio, another theme is death, and we've just had a lot of that, like gloomy. Like even as a Scorpio, I'm just kind of tired of it myself. It's like we've had a lot of deaths and a lot of sadness and grieving. And I think that the Taurus North Node will be kind of a new opportunity for us to start to move in that direction of thinking about life and like how to make life sustainable.
Yes. Later on, we're going to have a conjunction of Uranus and the North Node later on.
I was going to ask about that. Is that next year?
It's a
Or is that
really important time. I mean, I think the North Node going into Taurus is like, okay, Uranus has sort of acted like very petulant this year, but I think its ultimate desire for us is to wake up to the situation of the Earth and to how unsustainable our systems are. And I think that we're going to get back into that. I feel like that movie Don't Look Up was Uranus and Taurus going, okay, I'm going to show up again, and the nodes are going to change again, and so here we go. Get to work.
Yeah, Aurora, that'll happen in August. Like all of August is the node conjoined.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's around autumn.
Wow.
So that's
gonna
coming
be fun.
That'll be good. Yeah, so this is with, let's see, so Mars is in Pisces, and so we've got these contrary energies of, heaviness and then fantasy. And so we have a little bit of that going on with Mars in Pisces. I do want us to point out that Mars is, where is it? Mars is going to conjoin Neptune and Jupiter. Let's see, during this time. Okay, Neptune, it conjoins right after, a few days after this lunar eclipse. And it's going to conjoin Jupiter in the sign of Aries. So that's when things are going to really shift too. So we have Mars conjoined Neptune. We have, there's one other one. We have Venus conjoined Jupiter. And that could be, I don't know if you're planning an election that's going to make use of that, Bonnie, but that seems like
Yes,
primo
definitely.
election
Big
energy, right?
time.
Yeah, it's like a fever dream.
Yeah. So Jupiter will be in domicile and Venus will be exalted, and the two benefics are coming together. And so May Day is going to live up to its reputation,
Woo!
right?
Yes.
Deep screen fuck.
Yeah. Like everyone gets pregnant. No.
That is entirely possible given that chart.
Yeah.
I think too, I know that we're talking about Venus and Jupiter here, but I'm really drawn to this Mars meeting Jupiter right at the beginning of Aries.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that's down here. So we go into Mars into Aries time. Yeah.
and Mars and Aries we're gonna have as creating, which goes back into
Yeah.
that Venus election.
Yeah. Yeah. If you think of like Jupiter and Pisces and like with Neptune as like the dreaming, then Jupiter and Aries is like, let's do it. Like, let's create this.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Austin Coppock talked about on the astrology podcast about, Jupiter in Aries being like the kung fu teacher of like, I'm going to, this is my hand in Kill Bill, this is my hand now, it will be strong. So kind of this like very, Jupiter being expansive, but, Aries being very like, I'm going to hit the thing until I understand it. That
Mhm.
could be useful energy for a lot of people. And then Mars coming in and being like, yeah, let's do it. And all that will and drive in its home sign.
Mhm.
Could be really useful, energy to leverage.
Mhm.
Bonnie, what do you think about elections between Mars and Jupiter as well?
Yeah, I'm looking at the pileup of Jupiter, Venus, and Mars in Pisces to try to find like the best time because there's like so many different possible ways to go, like
Mhm.
which being closer to Neptune or Jupiter.
Maybe
So
a three-parter.
yeah, I'm really excited about. And then also there's like the Mars and Aries with Jupiter, so there's like so many possibilities there. It's a lot. I think there's like a lot. There's like multiple elections you could do during this time.
I think too, this is going to feel like a really sweet part of the year. Like not only because, especially in the northern hemisphere, it'll be like late spring, it'll just be comfortable to be outside with humans. Hopefully, that would be nice. But like, it almost feels like the astro weather is like biting into fruit, like just
Mhm.
juicy, delicious strawberries outside in the sun, enjoying like a real nice place.
But with like huge like vitality and like, oh my god, the strawberries are good! Like over the top, like sensational, like
Yeah, and for our
yes,
southern hemisphere
final
friends,
life
like,
force.
can you get that same experience with like autumnal fruits like apples and I don't know what grows in the southern hemisphere and is harvested, but whatever your seasonal fall fruits are in the southern hemisphere, like I hope that they are also
Mhm.
really delicious at this point.
Yeah, enjoying the harvest.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a pretty good period of time. And I think, magic, also beginning things on new moons. The new moon happens the day after this conjunction of Mars and Jupiter. So the downside of Mars and Jupiter makes things bigger. Mars is martial. It's kind of like, take some of that peaceful Pisces energy that we just had and, like elevate that. That potential conflict into getting something done or being authentic and true with people that we're in relationship with without blowing it up out of proportion. I agree. I think that this is a nice time of the year. Um, there
And then,
does get to be this Mars square Pluto towards the end of it. Were you going to say something with some of
yeah, I think that just remembering that Mars was retrograde in Aries last time we experienced Mars in Aries, and thinking back to that
Mhm. That was hard.
Yeah.
six 6 months of Mars and Aries, that was kind of a meat grinder.
Yeah.
Um, and knowing that like that meat grinder energy, like we've experienced this before. Um,
Mhm.
and it's going to be shorter this time. So even though it could feel grindery, it could feel great. I think part of the reason why Mars and Aries last time felt just grueling was just the length of it.
Mhm.
Well, and also it was because it was conjoining, it was squaring Saturn and Pluto at the same time.
Yeah.
Oh, over
And
in
in retro.
Capricorn.
Yeah.
That was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of those aspects aren't there anymore.
Mhm.
Um,
We might feel a little bit of that during this time when Mars is squaring Pluto. And the second US Pluto return transit is happening at the beginning of July, too. So there are
Like
some
on the birthday proper,
Yeah.
Independence Day.
yeah. So it is, some darker parts of conflict will probably show up during that
Yeah.
period. Mhm. Yeah. So then we go into Mars in Taurus.
yeah, Mars in Taurus is enjoying.
Hmm. We got, it's a lot of transits goes on during that time.
Yeah.
Enjoying. Mm.
Yeah. And Mars is in a Venus ruled sign in Taurus, so it's not exactly its like most comfy place, but I do think that just having a sister with a Mars and Taurus, even though Mars and Taurus doesn't want to fight as much as Mars and Aries, when they do, they're very stubborn and they will not let go. So there
Yeah.
could be some very stubborn, slow energy, like I'm not going to move.
Right.
It also might be worth remembering too that while there will come a point where Mars will be conjunct the North Node in Taurus, that like
Mhm.
this is going to be like a fuel, like, I like to think sometimes, of like the juxtaposition of the South Node, which is like the karma that we're learning to work past some of our bad habits, and the North Node being the solution or the balancing act of that. But it can feel really unfamiliar, and sometimes we can go like kicking and screaming. But Mars really will fuel that. So I think that there will be, in the way that we've had over the top energy and collaborations and unity and allyship that's happened with the planets thus far, throughout 2022, is we'll have like all of this Tauran energy will help support the North Node of like the beauty of life and being able to appreciate, and again remembering that the duty of Capricorn, like how beautiful it is to wipe the sweat off of our brow when we're planting a tree or touching and smelling a flower and feeling its petal on our nose. That reminds us, like, oh God, the planet's dying, but I can do something about it. I can try, because I'm here and I am one person as a part of a collective, and perhaps I lead by example. Perhaps I connect with the earth in ways that and it will be beautiful, with this. Terry, you pointed out the transit. Does Venus become conjunct with, or was that last month with Neptune?
Um, it was
Venus and Mars have separated at this point because Venus is in
Okay.
Gemini here.
it was Venus conjunct Jupiter towards the
So like the end of spring and beginning of summer, So when we get to this point where like,
was in
you
April.
know, okay, so yeah, so maybe a little
spring.
earlier than I thought, but yeah, just really fueling and allowing, remembering that our anchor of Pluto, showing us like we can transform. We have that option. We just have to shape our lens and to do our work in this sign to regain our power, to pull it back from these capitalistic ways expressing, like, this is how we use resources. This is how we, take care of ourselves. Like, treat yourself by filling a landfill, like really reevaluating, and really being very vehemently shown how beautiful the earth is, and how that can be really sad that we've made some bad mistakes, but we can change, we can work together. And I think that Mars and Taurus will definitely support that at this time.
I'm just looking at these trends. These are influences, but they're not big. And so I suggest, like, this would be a great time to take vacation. The first, July. And then we have the new moon in July, which then I think some more kind of coming to, those stressor points again, because Mars and Taurus is a fixed sign. So it is going to cross the North Node, like you said. And then it's also going to conjoin Uranus and square Saturn. And those two planets are starting to come closer together. So the time between those, for instance, Mars conjoin Uranus and Mars square Saturn happens in that first week of August. And that might be more like, oh, the vacation's over. Uranus is on the North Node.
That's a big back to school time. Like,
Yeah.
just in general, that's often a hairy time of year for folks.
Mhm.
Like, as I think, especially with the pandemic, like what are the decisions we're making regarding school are going to be made that week too.
And how is it going to be different from
Yeah.
the previous season? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
Or are we going to fall complacent, as we have all this Neptune and Pisces energy? Like, are we going to choose to
We've been
change?
in Neptune and Pisces for so long.
Or are we just gonna or I'm sorry, I meant Jupiter, but yeah,
Oh, yeah.
is Jupiter in Aries at this time?
it's retrograde. It retrograded a while ago. Let's see.
Yeah. It's like Jupiter's going back into Pisces.
I don't
It's
think
stationed retrograde at the end of July. And that was sort of like the signal of, okay, now there's some things happening.
it's still in Aries
But it's
through
still in
end of
Aries.
October.
Yeah, it's still in Aries.
Yeah.
And, there's some things to deal with, some decisions to make, some frustrations, because a square is harder than a conjunction. So when Mars was in Aquarius, that conjoining Saturn is a different thing than a square to Saturn. That's when we're frustrated. That's when this sort of explosive energy, I want change to happen now, meets a wall, and it's like we start to get really mad about what is obstructing the thing we think will move us forward.
Mars has a lot of will here, and it's again hitting logistic Saturn.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Mars is mediating between Saturn and Uranus, because first Mars was with Saturn and Aquarius, and now it's with Uranus and Taurus, so it's like going to both sides.
Yes, it is. You're right. Mm-hmm.
And then having to talk to Saturn and Aquarius again. That kind of that boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we kind of get through August, and then we get to Mars being in Gemini, and it's going to go retrograde in Gemini. So it's going to be in Gemini for 6 months. So do you want to talk about that, Aurora? What do you think about Mars in Gemini?
Our word for Mars in Gemini is learning, and that'll take us through the end of the year.
Yeah. So if we think of, I guess it was funny when we initially discussed this. I thought like, oh, it's going to break the year up equally, but it's like, no, it broke it up into 6 segments. But this last segment is actually quite long, and I think that it's quite appropriate and supportive. Where especially we talk about how was it last year that was the our ingress into the new age, this like shift from Pisces into Aquarius, and having to like really focus on our perceptions and our choices. And it's been especially with the nodes for the past 2 years, having been in Sagittarius and Gemini, there's been a lot of like, what is the story you're telling about this? Is this actually true? Are you checking your sources? Are you falling into like, cult like or, sensationalism of like delusion? So, I think that we're really, once again, being given an opportunity to be like, okay, we're showing you the things. What have you learned? What are you learning? Is what you know now the same as what you knew back then? Do you know something new? Is it still true? And revisiting those things. So this drive to think and to discover, and, especially if we think about how Mars had just gone through Taurus and we've had this bump of like, wow, the earth is so awesome. I want to like put in effort to enjoy it, like there could be this like, okay, well, that was really powerful to me to have that drive. And now how can I use my agency to learn and to do that in a really conscious way, but then to retrograde back through it where like you have to relearn, you have to read the book again, you have to triple check your source because, which can be a Mercury thing, but the effort of going through like, oh God, okay, now I'm doing an hour-long Google search trying to find that thing, or, like calling up the source that I heard the information from, or, checking to make sure that my thoughts on this are actually in line with the truth, with the facts of the world, and not telling a story about it that is detrimental.
Mhm.
I think it's worth noting too that we get a Mercury retrograde in Gemini from 4 degrees Gemini to 26 Taurus in May and June. So we kind of get
a lot of Gemini energy.
Yeah, we get this because, Mercury is, or Gemini is a Mercury ruled sign. And so I think that idea of like putting in the work around the information is a really good thing to think about, Aurora. I really like the way you put that. But also getting that preview just a month or two prior to this of, hey, you get a little taste of some extra Mercury and Gemini, what it feels like for a planet to retrograde there. And I know it goes back into Taurus, but it's gonna hit that early Gemini stuff. And what I want to
And
see.
even during this period when Mars is entering its shadow phase of its, so that's that's the zone that it's going to retrograde back later. So this is the shadow. The aspects it makes during this will be the first of 3 passes. And there's also going to be a Mercury retrograde during the Mars shadow period, which I think there just feels like things could go haywire a lot during this period of time. Like there's some
This is
haywire stuff, and frustrations doubled up because it can be frustrating with Mercury, but super frustrating with Mars when things we're used to it going one direction and it's going the opposite. And during this Mercury retrograde, one of the repeater aspects is going to be the opposing Jupiter in Aries. So that's just some frustrating kind of energy building. And I think, as you say, how do we focus on reality, the facts, the learning, the ways of acquiring information could be really helpful to kind of meet our frustrations. It makes a lot of sense.
And to force ourselves really to be honest, to engage in the news, but to not have a blind eye when it comes to learning and studying what is happening to people in minority groups during this time. Like, maybe we were lucky enough to explore the earth in a way that was, pleasurable, us taking a trip to an orchard and enjoying, an apple from a tree, as opposed to, other people who were like really connecting with the earth by, sleeping under a bridge and really feeling the rocks that they're sleeping on, And so I think that Mars can really aid us and give us, for better, for worse, one of the darker sides of Mars can be anxiety, that pent up energy that, if we don't express this energy, it can really build up. But to really, channel that into studying and understanding the impacts of what's going on in these groups at this time, to know like when it goes to, again, coming back to responsibility and duty, like what can we do to help? How can we like learn to, what areas where people are more impacted, studying ways in which, people are, doing things, people who are indigenous, like what are the lessons that we can learn from those people, as they're being oppressed, by this country. More thoughts.
So there's three aspects that Mars will make 3 times during this retrograde. So just like to give that information, there's a sextile to Chiron, there's a trine to Saturn, and then there's a square to Neptune. And the square to Neptune feels poignant because that's in the Sibley chart. So the illusion of, and Mars in the Sibley chart is in Gemini. So there feels like there's something, in this year where we get to really reflect on some of our power structures through the Pluto return and some of our illusions, especially in regards to Mars issues. So having Mars in Gemini in the US chart is interesting, right? Because I think this country has used force and has used a lot of war to expand its power, and so I wonder if there's something that we'll experience about that during this period. I'm not sure, but
I'm curious about, especially with it being on a Mercury ruled Gemini, of it being not a Cold War, but like an info war. I don't have another word right now, but like the war of information
and misinformation.
Yeah, I think media is definitely going to be a theme, and like I almost feel like this is like kind of a callback to the North Node in Gemini. Like, what did we learn during this time? Let's integrate it.
I agree.
And it might not go well at first, but
and two, I want to note that like we're heading into midterms at this point. So midterm elections will have, we will not have a Mercury retrograde, unlike when we had the general election in 2020. But we will have a Mars retrograde in Gemini, and we'll have just come out of a Mercury. We might still be in Mercury shadow at that point. I have the retrograde ends 10/2 for Mercury. I'm not sure when shadow period ends.
Oh, for the one in
Mercury ends retrograde at 24 Virgo. Let me see shadow period on this.
Keep wondering too at this point, between the overlap of, the Pisces energy, the delusion, but also, the birth of America, and the illusion of the American dream.
It'll be out of shadow
really
by mid-October,
being a point of like really fallen, deep, into those like that toxic masculinity, that like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and allowing, if that's going to be a part of, rolling up into the midterm elections and, going back to our conservative values that upon inception that this country was founded upon. I feel like we'll hear that a lot this year.
Yeah, who controls the narrative that's a big part of, I think. So then
and I
in
think
October,
I want to note that just this won't just be an America experiencing this. Like the Mars and Gemini will be a global experience of like information stuff.
exactly. That's right. It's just interesting how it mirrors the US chart in this particular year. It's interesting. And so then we get back to eclipse season in October. And October is marked by eclipses, the Mars actually stationing retrograde, and then early November when Saturn and Uranus are really close together and are kind of activated by both Venus and the Sun. So yeah, this period of time feels like we go kind of into some uncertainty, right? The north node, the south, it'll be a south node solar eclipse and a north node lunar eclipse, kind of the opposite of the one in the springtime. Yeah, any thoughts about this? As you can see, Uranus is at 17 degrees Taurus, and this lunar eclipse is 16 degrees Taurus. So it's a very
Gonna be.
Uranian eclipse as well.
Right on election day.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be a vibe.
So
Take care.
it's all so over the top. They're like caricatures of this archetypal energy. It's like really extra.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very like 10 of swords, 10 of cups, 10 of wands. Like it's the tens energy that like
In a tower year.
right, like just completely over the top, like all the players are on the stage, you know, third encore, singing the songs, doing the things. I don't know what the songs are, but
The big favorites, the ones that have been on forever and
the
ever.
one we've been hearing for the past year. You know, that TikTok trend that just won't fucking go away. It'll be that. I hope it's piggy dipping because that's my favorite TikTok trend right now. And when I watch this in 6 months, I will be laughing at myself about that. But I think it's gonna be a whole vibe, and I just want to encourage our viewers to make sure you're taking care of yourself and feeding your body. And you might, you know, with these, you know, eclipses always happen in pairs, generally speaking. And so, you know, take care of yourself in eclipse season. Enjoy your body, feel your feelings, maybe have an ugly cry with your bath bomb. Like maybe do both.
And I forgot to note this, and I should have, but Jupiter goes back into Pisces right in the middle of the eclipses,
Yeah.
right before Mars stations retrograde. So that is actually another kind of ease that happens, another way of maybe we want to just check out because the stress is getting a little intense.
Mhm.
But also it's Jupiter in Pisces, so it's like, let's go have a party.
Yeah, and so the idea is how to use that energy to be conscious and to be present rather than to escape and disassociate.
Mhm.
And escaping and disassociating is a great coping mechanism. You
Yeah.
know?
It's a
There's
big
no judgment
reason.
about it. Right.
But it can also be a time of connection too. Like maybe Jupiter is going back into Pisces for this reason, because it's like, okay, I have a little bit more work to do with like connecting everyone.
Exactly. So there's some good evolutionary type energy going on late October to early November. Then, you know, we have another Mars squaring Neptune, and this is at 22 degrees, which is the degree that is in the Siri chart, just to kind of come back to
Wow.
that. So there's something interesting about that. I have to admit, I think about everything now in terms of that movie, Don't Look Up. And you know, one of the things about Mars and Gemini and Neptune and Pisces, or it's in Virgo actually. I know it's in Virgo in our country's chart is you know, the ways that we, you know, somebody gives us a hard truth and we want to listen to pop music and you know tune into the social media and somehow escape it. And so that is a theme that just kind of shows up. Um, I think Mars in Gemini is going to be like, how do you manage information? How do you manage the data that's coming in? And how do we cope with it? Because it's a real thing. We can't just muscle our way through the hard things. We have to have kind ways to treat ourselves and to treat each other as we, see what's happening. So yeah, this will be an interesting time of the year too. We get into the last part of the year.
We're still Mars learning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Mars period is very long, and when Mars is retrograding, it opposes the Sun, and that's the midpoint of the Mars retrograde. So during the early part of December, it will feel like, okay, I know what this is now. This is like, oh, this is what we're dealing with. This is how it is actually, it could be a more productive time after this, as far as the Mars retrograde goes. Yeah. And there's not a whole lot, you know, to make note of in this period of time. I mean, there are transits, of course, but nothing that stands out is unique. Right. So we kind of get to the last part of the year. I did make note that those three transits that Mars is making, sextile Chiron, square Neptune, and trine Saturn, finish up in 2023. And then Mars stations direct in January 12th. So it doesn't finish until then. But is there any, as we kind of look at all of this year, I mean, we could do our summing up, or is there something else about this end of the year time that people are noticing?
I think what I'm noticing here is that this maybe making note of what this this polarity that we just went through at the very end of the nodes in Sag and Gemini will be reflected a little bit with that Mars and Sun. And so, if you're watching this in January of 2021, thinking back to the past year and a half of what did it feel like to have those nodes where they were, and what was that information what did that feel like, and then thinking forward into the Mars opposed the Sun, and those same signs, and what are the themes that come up now, if you're a journaler, maybe thinking about those themes, and then on December 7th maybe thinking about, are those reflected here in a very vitality opposed will kind of way? Like how is vitality need to come into balance with drive and with will?
That's a good point. We do, before the end of the year, have Jupiter going back into Aries, December 20th. So that's the final bit of Jupiter in Pisces.
Tara, I feel like I ask you this like once every 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
When does Neptune move into Aries?
I don't know. I'd have to look in my. It's a while. It's
Okay, so we've got a couple
got
more
another
years.
decans to go through.
Mhm.
It's a while. Let's
Yes.
see.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because I feel like will be a significant tone shift, but it seems like with Neptune
Sure.
still being in Pisces.
It's in 2026.
Okay, so we've got a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll get, just thinking forward a few years, just a tiny preview. We get this Jupiter and Neptune sharing Pisces this year, and then we move into Saturn sharing Pisces with Neptune for a little bit.
That would be really interesting.
Yeah.
After that, which will
Dissolving
be-
of structures.
Yeah.
And then at some point after that, I feel like there's like a massive energetic shift coming, which is Uranus and Saturn. I'm really stuck on Mars today. Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune all end up shifting signs right around the same time. And then they kind of, those two outer planets stay in those next two signs for a while, but we're kind of at this like really feeling the energy of those two big gas planets out there, teaching us some lessons, that, we only have a few more years truly with them there. So just thinking forward about, if you're someone who makes 5-year plans, like maybe pull out your ephemeris and take a look.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share.
Yeah.
So that was a quick journey through the year. And I'm wondering if people have anything that they're taking away or just like want to sum up what they're going to pay attention to during this year.
Yeah, I wrote a few keywords when I was thinking about this before, of just summing up the year. And I feel like the talk at the end of the year got me thinking a little bit more. But what I was originally thinking of was that connection between Venus and Mars, and also with the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, bringing more of that Mars and Venus energy, and Jupiter as well. Protecting values and dreams is like a theme I see for this year. But now I'm also thinking about that really long retrograde cycle of Mars and Gemini, and how protecting values and dreams isn't just necessarily fighting, but also like learning and sharing information too. So that's a takeaway I'm taking from this.
Ooh, nice. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be, this year is really going to be about embodying care for myself and for others. And I think that ties in with that Mars and Venus walking together, that Jupiter in Pisces feeling like party town. I have lots of feelings about Jupiter in Pisces that I did not express tonight. But also the nodes moving. I think this is the first year that I've really gotten a chance to really pay attention to that shift. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. So I think the words for me are embodying care right now.
Nice.
I think for me, so I myself personally am having a very dynamic year this year, via like tarot card, which is the Tower, and this is a first house perfection year, so like identity and body issues, and it's like coming back to the beginning with fresh eyes. And then also at that point, from this newness, really honoring and recognizing the over the top energies that like are going to be incredibly potent. And when things like this happen, I notice myself, I could fall into like catastrophizing or doing a lot to try to prepare, and like prep, and there's like a part of me that I think connects Capricorn, right? Like preparedness with success, and with, if I'm not prepared and I don't plan ahead, then there's no way that I'm going to survive. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. But with a lot of the energy that I'm recognizing, that's going to be potent and important for me this year as I go through, this identity work, and this upheaval is just, Venus is my time lord this year, and Venus is in Sagittarius. So some of the keywords for me, I was writing them down towards the end, were adventure, surprises, and responsibility. And I think that, doing my best to try to like, knowing that surprises are going to come, and knowing that things are going to be unexpected and dynamic and huge, trusting myself to be as prepared and capable. I have done a lot of work in a lot of different arenas, to get to where I am as, you know, a 36-year-old person, and trusting that like I'm going to show up and I can still be skilled and I can enjoy these surprises. Even not all surprises have to be the worst thing. So I think that there's a part of me in my duty of really embracing discovery and adventure in those surprises, and showing up as best as I'm able, to be of service and to show up for my work and do the duties.
Hmm. Great. I think I want to use the Jupiter energy this year, while in Pisces, to be kind to myself, to practice an empathy and compassion that comes from empathy towards myself, to meet the ups and downs of the year. And then when Jupiter is in Aries, to risk, to dare, without certainty of knowing where that will lead. So that feels kind of, I feel like Jupiter is a big guide, and actually Jupiter rules my chart. So I'm often guided by Jupiter. So thank you, everyone. I want to encourage people who are watching this, who this is your first time encountering Starsdance Mystery School, to check us out. Starsdance Mystery School is on Patreon, and we have a website under that name, and you can learn about joining our school in a lot of different ways. I hope everyone's 2022 is really beautiful, and we get to enjoy some of that embodied experience of Taurus. Yeah. So good night.